You have seen the photographs. A white farmhouse at the end of a dirt lane, a black buggy moving slow along the shoulder of a county road, a line of children in straw hats and plain dresses walking to a one-room school. And the moment you see it, something in you relaxes. You think, those are the people who got it right. No phones, no noise, no greed, just faith and family and work done with the hands. I know that feeling, because for the first 18 years of my life, I was the boy in the straw hat. I grew up old order Amish. I was baptized into the church. I knelt on the wooden floor of a neighbor's house every other Sunday and gave myself to a way of life that millions of people romanticize and almost nobody actually understands. My name is Jacob. I left a few years ago, and this is the place where I finally say the things I was raised to keep behind the barn door. I want to be careful with my words tonight, because I am not here to mock anyone. The people I grew up with are not monsters. My mother is one of the kindest human beings alive. My father worked harder than any man I have ever met. I love these people. That is exactly why the silence has to end. Because the postcard is real, but the postcard is not the whole picture. And the things that don't fit on the postcard are the things they would very much prefer you never knew. So tonight I'm going to tell you the secrets of growing up Amish, the real ones, the ordinary ones. Not the crimes you read about in the news, but the quiet, daily truths that shape an Amish child from the moment he can walk. The things that don't get said to outsiders. Not because they're hidden in a basement, but because nobody on the inside ever stops to question them out loud. Let's begin with the first one, and it's the one that explains all the rest. Everybody thinks the Amish reject technology. No cars, no electricity, no phones. And so people assume it's a religious rule, like a commandment written somewhere that says thou shalt not own a tractor. It isn't. There is no verse against electricity. There is no scripture about cars. The truth, the first thing they don't want you to know, is that the entire system is not about machines at all. It's about control, separation from the world. The German word is Gelassenheit, and people translate it as humility or yielding, but what it really means in practice is this. You give up your own will, completely, forever. Every rule you've ever heard about the Amish exists to keep the individual small and the community total. A car would let you drive too far from the church. The internet would let you read things the bishop didn't approve. A telephone in the house would let a private conversation happen that the community couldn't hear. So the rules aren't really about the buggy or the lantern. They're about making sure there is no version of you that exists apart from the group. And once you see it that way, the strange little inconsistencies suddenly make sense. You wonder why the Amish are allowed to ride in a car, but not to own one. Why a shop can use a diesel generator and air-powered tools, but a house can't have a wall socket. Why a phone is forbidden in the kitchen, but permitted in a little wooden shanty out at the end of the lane. People think that's hypocrisy. It isn't. It's the system working exactly as intended. A car you can't own can never carry you away on a whim. A phone you have to walk out to in the cold will never become the thing you reach for in a private moment. The rules were never about the object. They were always about the distance between you and the world, and the distance between you and your own private will. That is the secret at the center of everything. Once you understand that, every other rule starts to make sense. Which brings me to the second thing. There is a rule book. It governs everything. The color of your shirt, the width of your hat brim, whether your buggy can have a windshield, whether your kitchen can have linoleum, how long a man's hair must be, and exactly how a woman must fold her prayer cap. It's called the Ordnung, and here is the part outsiders never grasp. It is not printed anywhere. There is no book you can hold. The Ordnung lives only in the spoken agreement of the church, reviewed twice a year, and it is different from one church district to the next. The family 3 miles down the road might be allowed something your family is forbidden, and both are Amish. I grew up memorizing a law that I was never once allowed to read. You absorb it the way you absorb a language, from 1,000 corrections. Tuck your shirt, not that hat. We don't do that here. And because it was never written, it could never be argued with. You can't point to a page and ask why. There is no page. There is only the bishop and the weight of everyone's eyes, and the understanding that to question the Ordnung is itself the sin. That's the second thing they don't want you to know. The most powerful law in your life is one you are never permitted to see. The third secret is about your mind and what happens to it. I went to school through the 8th grade. After that, it was over. Most Amish children finish their formal education around 14, and that is not an accident or a hardship. It is the design. There was a Supreme Court case in 1972, Wisconsin versus Yoder, and the Amish won the right to pull their children out of school early. People hold that up as religious freedom, and in a courtroom, it is. But sit with what it means for a child. At 14, when an outside kid is just beginning to learn how the wider world works, an Amish kid is done. No high school, no science you weren't taught, no history except the version your community tells. You learn enough arithmetic to run a farm or a furniture shop, enough reading to follow the German prayer book, and then the door closes. Here is what they don't tell you. An education is the one thing that lets you imagine a different life. It is the map out. And so the schooling ends precisely at the age where a young person might start asking the dangerous questions. I didn't realize until I was grown that I had been raised very gently and very deliberately to not know what I didn't know. That is the quietest fence they ever built around me, and for years I couldn't even see it. I need to pause for 1 second, because this part matters. If you are still with me, if any of this is landing, do me a favor and subscribe. This channel is where I tell the truths I was raised to swallow, and I am going to keep telling them. And tell me down in the comments. Were you raised inside any community where asking questions was treated as a betrayal? Amish or not, I read every single one. You are not as alone in it as you were taught to feel. Now let me tell you the fourth thing. This is the one that took me the longest to say out loud. The Amish have a punishment, and it is more effective than any prison ever built. It's called the ban, or the meidung, the shunning. If you are baptized into the church as an adult, and then you break the rules and refuse to repent, the community can put you under the ban. And the ban is not a stern talking to. It is erasure. People you have known your entire life will no longer eat at the same table as you. Your mother will not take food from your hand. Your own father may not ride in a car you are driving. Some will not do business with you, not because they hate you. Many of them are crying while they do it. They do it because they have been taught that this is how they save your soul, by making your life so lonely that you come crawling back. I have watched it happen. I have watched a man sit at the far end of a long table while his family ate 3 feet away and pretended he wasn't there. He could pass a dish to the children, but his wife had to set hers down on the table first and let him pick it up, because to take it from his hand directly was to share his sin. That is how precise it gets. There are families who eat at a separate small table, who do not accept money straight from the shunned person's fingers, who will ride in his buggy but will not let him drive theirs. None of it is left to feeling. It is a procedure, and everyone knows the steps. And every Amish child grows up watching it, knowing in their bones that this is what waits on the other side of the fence. You are not raised to believe leaving is wrong, exactly. You are raised to believe leaving means losing every single person you have ever loved in a single afternoon with no way back. Your grandparents, your brothers and sisters, the people who held you as a baby, all of them taught that the kindest thing they can do is to turn away. That is the fourth thing they don't want you to know. The wall around the community isn't made of rules. It's made of the people you love being told to turn away from you. And it works. God does it work. Now the fifth secret, because the world has gotten this one completely backwards. You've heard of Rumspringa. The TV shows sold you a story. Amish teenagers turned loose into the modern world to party, drink, drive cars, do whatever they want, then choose. Freedom for a season. That's not what it is. The word just means running around, and what it actually means is the period in the teen years when courtship begins and a young person is, technically, not yet baptized, so not yet fully under the church's discipline. For most kids in a strict community, Rumspringa is not a wild rebellion. It's Sunday singings, it's gathering with other young people. Some test the boundaries, sure. But the cameras went looking for the handful who went wild and ignored the vast majority who barely strayed at all. And here is the trick built into it, the part they will not advertise. Rumspringa is framed as a free choice. You're an adult now, they say. You choose the church with open eyes, like a man deciding his own future. But think about what that choice actually looks like from the inside. You have been raised since birth to know only this one world. You were pulled out of school at 14 so you'd have no education to imagine another. You've watched your whole life what happens to the ones who walk away. The empty chair, the family that looks through them. You have no driver's license, no high school diploma, often no real grasp of how rent or a resume or a bank even works. And then, standing at the edge of all that, they hand you a slip of paper and say, choose, stay, and have everyone you love, or go into a world you were never taught to survive, and lose them all. That is not a choice. That is the most pressured decision a human being can ever be asked to make, dressed up in the clothing of liberty. The genius of it is that afterward, the community can say you picked this freely, you signed it yourself. That is the fifth thing they don't want you to know. Rumspringa is not the door swinging open. It is the door closing, slowly, kindly, with a smile, and your own hand on the latch. The sixth thing I have to say gently, because it is about the women. And they did not choose the world they were born into any more than I did. In the community I grew up in, a woman's path was set before she could speak. She would be a wife. She would be a mother, usually many times over. She would cover her hair, submit to her husband, and keep her opinions inside the house. The men make the decisions of the church. Only men can be ministers or bishops, and even those are chosen by lot, by drawing a slip from a hymnal, because to want the role would be pride. I watched my mother be one of the strongest, smartest people in any room, and I watched that strength have nowhere to go but the kitchen and the garden and the raising of children. She could run a household of 10 on no money and no electricity. She could doctor a fever, deliver a calf, put up 400 jars of food before the first frost, and not once in her life was she asked what she thought about anything that happened outside the four walls of that home. There was no unkindness in it most days. The men I grew up around were not cruel, but there was no question of anything else either. A girl is not told she cannot be more. She is simply never shown that more exists. She is handed an apron and a future in the same motion, and taught to call the smallness of it contentment. And by the time she might wonder, the schooling has ended, and the courtship has begun, and the path has already become the only path there is. I'm not here to speak for those women. I'm here to tell you the truth I saw, with respect, that half the community lived an entire life inside a fence they were taught to call devotion. And here is the last secret, and it might be the most important because it's the one that makes all the others so hard to talk about. It's real. The good part is real. The barn that goes up in a single day because 200 neighbors showed up at dawn. The family that loses everything in a fire and never spends one night without a roof because the community simply rebuilds it. No insurance, no invoice, just hands. The quiet of a Sunday with no screens. The certainty of belonging to something older than yourself. I have lived in the outside world for years now, and I have never once found anything that replaces what that community does well. The Amish are not a cautionary tale. They are people who built something beautiful and something heavy out of the very same materials. That is what makes it so hard. It is not a story of villains. It is a story of good people inside a system that does not allow itself to be questioned. And a child raised inside it cannot tell the love from the control because they arrive wrapped in the same hands. The same father who would not let me read the books I wanted is the same father who carried me on his shoulders through 3 feet of snow when I was small. The same community that would shun a man for leaving is the same community that would rebuild his house for free if it burned. It is all one thing. It took me years on the outside to learn how to hold both at once, to stop pretending it was all a prison and to stop pretending it was all a paradise, to keep the love and to finally, quietly, set down the part that was never love at all. So those are the secrets of growing up Amish. Not the lurid ones, the quiet ones, the technology that was never about technology, the rule book you're never allowed to read, the schooling that ends right where the questions begin, the shunning that turns your own family into the fence, the choice that was decided long before you were old enough to make it, and underneath all of it, a kindness so real it makes the whole thing nearly impossible to see clearly from the inside. If something in this spoke to you, if you were raised in any closed world and you have spent years trying to tell the love from the control, then I want you to know I see you, and you were not weak for staying as long as you did. You were working with the only map you were ever given. There are things I could not say in this video, stories that would not survive on a platform like this one. The specifics, the names changed, the pages of the unwritten Ordnung as I actually lived it, and exactly how I found my way out. I wrote all of it down. Everything they would never allow on YouTube is in the book, and you'll find it linked in the description and pinned in the first comment of this video. Subscribe, because I am going to keep pulling the door open on the world I came from, gently, honestly, and without ever forgetting that the people behind it are mine. Until next time, guard your questions. They are the most valuable thing you own. They were nearly taken from me, and getting them back is what saved my life.